Live, where news comes first. This is ABC-7 Extra.
Good evening, I'm Maria Garcia. Welcome to ABC-7 Extra. The EPISD cheating scandal has been one of the darkest developments in El Paso's history. Kids forced out of school, their right to an education taken from them. Other students put in grades above or below their level, cheated out of learning. All thanks to former Superintendent Lorenzo Garcia, who profited from essentially harming students and who served 2 years in prison for it. And as this community continues to heal, this week we were reminded of how much damage was done. 5 more former administrators now face criminal charges. ABC-7 was the only TV station there when Dr. Damon Murphy, former EPISD Associate Superintendent, and 4 others were taken into the El Paso County Jail. Murphy faces 3 charges: conspiracy to defraud the U.S., mail fraud, and mail fraud aiding and abetting. Next is John Tanner of Austin High School. He's facing 4 charges: conspiracy to defraud the U.S. mail fraud aiding and abetting, and conspiracy to retaliate against a witness. Again, he's a former employee. Next, Mark Tagmeyer, a former assistant principal, facing the same 4 charges as Tanner. He currently works for the Clint Independent School District as an administrator. Another former Austin assistant principal, Nancy Love, is facing 2 charges: conspiracy to retaliate against a witness and false declaration before a grand jury. Love still works for EPISD as an assistant principal at the Jefferson Silva Health Magnet School. And finally, Diane Thomas. She too was an assistant principal at Austin. She's charged with conspiracy to retaliate against a witness. Thomas was fired from the district in 2014. Former assistant Superintendent James Anderson was also named in the indictment by his position. Joining us to talk tonight about how EPISD moves forward from this, Superintendent Juan Cabrera and Board President Dori Fenenbock. You can email us your questions and comments to ABC7Extra at KVIA.com. You can also reach us at 915-496-1775. On Twitter, you can tweet me at MariaGABC7. Now, we're going to talk today about how EPISD continues to break away from its past. But first, let's get a recap of how this all began. Here's our Bob Harp with the timeline.
The investigation into EPISD started with a hunch from former Senator Elliot Shapley, who in 2010 accused the district of cheating.
Garcia is teaching the town to cheat, not compete.
At the start, it seemed no one would listen.
And it was very difficult to make things happen. I went to Jaime Esparza, he didn't do anything. I went to the TEA, they didn't do anything. I finally went to Barack Obama and wrote him a letter. And it took that letter and the Department of Justice getting involved, which got the FBI involved, which made everything happen.
Lorenzo Garcia was arrested by the FBI in 2011. The next year, he would plead guilty. EPISD commissioned an $800,000 report to investigate how deep the cheating scheme went. The conclusion: the district was run by a, quote, criminal for 5 years.
And at this point, we're just looking forward to move forward.
The state removed the trustees who failed to have proper oversight on Garcia and appointed a board of managers to rebuild EPISD. They hired a new superintendent, and in 2015, power returned to newly elected trustees, now in charge of healing the betrayal.
That's the heart of the story. When you take away an education, you've taken away the heart of the future for a kid. You can't do anything worse in a community than take away the education of your students.
If you would like to see a detailed timeline of events, all you have to do is go to KVIA.com right now, and in our top story section, you'll see EPISD cheating scandal timeline. Bob Harp, ABC7.
Thanks to Bob for filing that report for us. And joining us now are EPISD Board President Dori Fenenbock and EPISD Superintendent Juan Cabrera. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate it. Mr. Cabrera, I want to start a question for you here. Your work now is to provide the best learning environment for students. And I wonder what goes through your mind when you read of what these former administrators allegedly did at EPISD. The indictment says Damon Murphy unlawfully gave marching orders to principals to keep students in the 9th grade. He also specifically, allegedly, told teachers not to inform parents of their rights to petition this. I mean, it's appalling stuff, and I wonder, what do you think when you read this? What do you feel?
It's been an emotional week for us at the district. You know, it kind of brings all this back for the community as well, and for a lot of our employees. And I think that it reminds me particularly why I sought the opportunity to be a part of the change, to make an impact. I felt compelled, you know, as I read the stories that the rest of the community read. I was living in Austin, not here, but I just felt that somebody needed to go try to make that right, and somebody that could do it without being afraid of the difficulty of the job, the consequences. And it has been a very tough 2.5 years, and it's still tough. And I think you know, this week just brings it all back for me in terms of the seriousness of what we're doing and all of the harm that was done.
Mm-hmm. A lot of people may be a little bit confused because, you know, they think, I didn't hear about the cheating scandal for years, and then suddenly 5 former administrators indicted and arrested. But, you know, just to clarify, these were not people hired under your watch.
Absolutely.
So I want to make sure that that's out there.
Yes.
And, you know, as the mother of a child, when I read this, I think, this is someone's daughter or son.
Absolutely.
Who this was done to. Someone suffered for this. I mean, lives were impacted at such a tender age, no less. And these are the people who the community entrusted with our children. What do you think about that?
I think you said it very well. It's appalling, you know, and it's just very unfortunate that these individuals were involved in this behavior. And you know, we just all we can do at this point is learn from our mistakes and make sure that we create a culture where this can't happen again. And you know, we've worked very hard to restore the public trust that was lost over this, and this compounded with the actions of Garcia, independent of the cheating, that led him to prison. You know, we've really been at our lowest point in this district, and the only ones that have been forgotten about are the kids and progress of our kids. Mm-hmm. And the superintendent came in and created a new motto, I am EPISD, and it creates this reflection of, you know, we all have a stake in the success of our school district, whether we are students or parents or teachers or community members. It includes, if we see something that is wrong or feels wrong, we need to have an avenue, a channel of bringing that forward. And then we need to have trustees and administration that's open to responding to it and dealing with it, and always staying focused on student progress.
Mm-hmm. I actually want to ask you about that. You know, it's not just students who suffered here. The indictment states these former administrators, some of them went, you know, on a very deliberate, strategic campaign to smear and professionally harm one of the educators who was speaking to the FBI at the time, who was speaking to investigators about the cheating, the alleged cheating. What has EPISD implemented to ensure educators feel safe if they have something they want to report?
Well, yeah, one of the most important steps that was taken initially was when the managers made sure that the audit department reported separately, not to the superintendent, because that was the case previously. And then that hotline is something that's utilized quite a bit. And in addition to that, we do some independent audits where we're going out there and, you know, without warning, double checking some of our systems. But most importantly, and you know, we've already had a couple instances of this, we're trying to create a culture where they realize that they know from the top to the bottom, from the trustees through the superintendent, we are an ethical organization. We are here to support and prevent any wrongdoing. And you know, we're working very closely with the authorities. And so it's just that honesty that hopefully that we've been able to have people feel comfortable that we're here for the right reason and that they can come talk to us and we're going to protect them if they have any concerns. Because one of the things we've learned is, you know, we're trying, you know, diligently to put together as many systems as we can, but there's nothing better than an adult stepping up and telling us that something doesn't feel right.
Right. Former Austin principal John Tanner allegedly told an employee to change attendance records. In 1 year, according to the indictment, he made 11,000 fraudulent attendance entries. I mean, this was a rampant, deep-rooted culture of corruption, according to the FBI. Are things like this what motivated you to get involved with EPISD?
Well, absolutely.
Fenenbock.
Yeah, absolutely. As I said, sometimes getting to your lowest point, it creates an opportunity to rebuild from the ashes, and I think it's brought out with this last election of the trustees. Some really extraordinarily qualified trustees, and we've made very quick work of pulling together as a team and getting behind the superintendent's vision for the district, and we're seeing tremendous progress in such a short time. So it's very rewarding to see us being able to pivot from this such a sad moment in history and not being anchored in that anymore, but really being able to move our students forward, and that's it feels good, and I'm absolutely convinced that we are throughout the administration, the central office, the trustees, very much focused on what we can do through better teaching, better technology, and better programs to enhance the learning experience.
Right. If anything, I think the silver lining is that at the time of the cheating scandal, it seemed not only that the board at the time, according to some critics, was sort of dormant, but also that the community was kind of not paying attention to our school district, that there wasn't engagement. And I think if there's a silver lining here, I think it's that we've seen community members, we've seen parents, we've seen families, we've seen people step up to run for the board because they care, and also the media. I think the media, as it should have been all along, pays maybe just a little bit more attention to the district, as it should. Mr. Cabrera, one other question for you. One of the people accused still at EPISD, Nancy Love, is an assistant principal at Jefferson Civil Magnet. The FBI says she retaliated against a teacher who was speaking to the FBI by getting a student to make a false allegation against that teacher. The FBI says she even lied to a grand jury. I know you're probably going to tell me this is a personnel issue. I can't say much about her employment status, but I think the public deserves to know if someone accused of doing these things is going to be around their children at the school district.
Well, and that's a pretty complicated issue. That was the one. All the other folks were former employees that had been out of the district for years. In this case, the FBI found out about that activity, and they didn't share that with us. It was a private investigation or a investigation. We have shared a lot of information, but in this particular case, we don't know how that transpired, and we weren't investigating her for that particular matter. So it's not even that it's a personnel matter. We just weren't privy to that particular situation. We actually found out about that. It was similar to some of the other charges for the Austin folks when they were terminated in August of 2013. But we just didn't know about Nancy Love. That was an FBI.
So now that you are privy to that, what action do you think is appropriate?
Well, so we do have some policies about what you can do with an indictment and what type of indictment. So, I was out of town all last week, and we'll be at it on Monday and take a look at that and find out exactly what our options are with regard to the indictment and the pending proceedings.
Okay. All right. We have an email from Leticia. What assistance did the district provide to these students affected by the corruption? And will the FBI have any intentions in investigating retirees who might have been involved? So two-part questions. Let's start with the first one. What assistance did the district provide to these students affected by the corruption?
So, we had, Garcia was gone in 11. You had 3 interim soups between 11 and the time I got there at the end of 13. And they took very aggressive steps to try to identify, rather than just look at kids from Bowie, they actually went out and any kid that left the district during a certain time period, and if we didn't have a record of where they might have gone, they're called leaver codes. Right. So they went back and actively tried to contact everyone that they could. We we partnered with the El Paso Community College to create the first of its kind, a CCTA, a Career College Technical Academy, where a kid could come back all the way to the age of 26 and get a degree with us and also start working on community college. At this time, there's only been about 70 kids that we found that wanted to come back. For whatever reason, some either went to another school district or moved out of the city, and they decided not to come back. But through all of the folks they've contacted, 70 have come back. But
out of how many affected students?
Well, it's hard to tell which ones are affected because, as I said, what we do is we're required to put lever codes in.
Right.
So if they tell us when they're leaving, why they left, then we know. But if they just stop showing up, we don't know. And that's what's unfortunate about the way the system is that, and I think that's probably what made the scheme a little bit easier, is that you don't have to tell somebody you're disenrolling from a school.
Right.
But we went ahead and actively sought those people out. It took a couple of years to find them all. And now some of those, it's been 10 years that Garcia started at EPISD in 2006. So unfortunately, it's probably a lot of children that we won't be able to find.
All right. Well, we have to take a break. When we come back, we're going to get to your phone calls. And then we're also going to talk about the testing system. How does the system, does it encourage cheating? Does it make it easier to cheat? Does it put pressure on administrators to cheat? So you're watching ABC-7 Extra. Remember, you can call us at 496-1775. Tweet me at Maria G ABC7 or email us at ABC7Extra@KVIA.com. We'll be right back. Welcome back to ABC-7 Extra. We're talking about how EPISD moves forward from the cheating scandal in the past. We're talking to EPISD Board President Dori Fenenbock and EPISD Superintendent Juan Cabrera. I want to make sure before we move on that we clarified, I don't think it was made abundantly clear, that Nancy Love is suspended.
Yes.
Right, and that starting this week you'll talk about what the next step is since she's been indicted. Okay. Now let's get to the system. Does it pressure administrators to cheat? Is it set up in a way that it creates a system that forces them to cheat? Here's our Darren Hunt who explored this.
We shouldn't forget what was at the root of this. I don't think it was inherently that these people were evil people.
Senator Jose Rodriguez said this week's arrests in the EPISD cheating scandal can all be traced to a flawed state testing system.
With regard to the principals and the lower level administrators, they were obviously feeling pressure from the superintendent.
I really think what the whole scandal revealed to us is that the whole culture of the organization had been distorted by this simple fixation on testing.
Susie Bird is a trustee on the EPISD board.
It's really so hard to dismantle that culture within the organization because for so long teachers, principals, administrators were judged based on those scores.
I blame the test, totally. And I'll tell you right now, it's not going to get better.
Arlindo Valencia, president of the Isleta Teachers Association, expects more testing scandals and arrests in the future.
If you take the test out of it, teachers would not need to cheat. Administrators would not have to pressure teachers, and superintendents wouldn't have to pressure the administration. I'm not excusing any of what they did. It was wrong. And the majority of teachers and administrators, they play fair.
All right, moving on now. In the future, the state will tie 20% of a teacher's evaluation to standardized test scores. The teacher union leader, whom we just heard of, says she believes that could lead not only more administrators cheating, but also teachers and students as well. Do you believe that?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. You know, the testing it just gives you a status report of how a student is performing on a particular moment in a particular moment in time. And we need to look more broadly at what student success is. You know, what are they doing? How are they achieving after they leave high school altogether, and as well as how they are progressing along the way. And we talk about this all the time. You know, how we find those data points that can give us a much broader picture as opposed to just a test score. And we're also committed to a holistic approach to education, not just how well they perform on an exam, but how they are developing as individuals. Are they becoming more mindful and thoughtful citizens? Are they working better as teammates and compassionate individuals? And those are very difficult things to measure, but every bit as important.
Emotional learning.
Yeah. Emotional learning. Every bit as important as your rote memorization, which is often really only what is captured from a test.
So when you speak about that, teaching in a holistic way, what does that look like in practical terms? How do you implement that? What policies do you have? Can you expand
Well, let
on
me
that?
so one of the things that we're doing that's the biggest initiative in this area is trying to transition from a lecture format more to a collaborative learning where a teacher becomes a facilitator, not a lecturer.
Okay.
So if you do that, you automatically require a child to have to find their voice, to collaborate, to work with their teammates, to build those other intangible skills that we know that help make people successful.
Think more
Grit.
critically.
Absolutely. So, because one of the things that happens in a pure lecture format, as you mentioned, rote memorization, that's set up for that. So I give it to you, you give it back. It's very one-dimensional. We want kids to have a 4D learning experience. We want them engaged, involved. We want them to have a love of learning. We want them to enjoy what they're doing in school. I mean, it really sounds, if you think about it, it's what we look for in kindergarten and first grade, and then we kind of lose it after that. That's,
right.
you know, we have kids, you've all seen what that looks like, and how we really work hard at engaging and make it an active learning experience. We want to take that all the way to the 12th grade and have our kids enjoy learning and learn in those kinds of active learning spaces all the way up through high school.
So these are the things that as a district you can do while the legislation is passed to reform the testing system.
Yes, and I want to make a point that we need to have a tolerance as a community that the test scores, if that's not what we are about, then we can't put, as a community, too much emphasis on test scores. As long as our students are advancing and achieving, and we're going to start tracking where they go beyond high school, and they have better opportunities when they leave EPISD, then we know that we've done our jobs. And so we can't be so rigid about test scores as parents ourselves. We need to look at, do we feel like our children are evolving in the way that we're hoping that they will, in terms
right.
of, you know, the character, the ethics, the kind of people that they're being, that
right.
they're becoming.
So it also starts at home.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Okay, I want to make sure we get to our phone calls. Adam on the west side. Hi, Adam. What's your comment or your question?
Hi, Superintendent. My name's Adam. My question is not specifically for the parents of the students, but what would your message be to the students in the El Paso Independent School District right now that they could really trust the administration with what's going on right now with the cheating scandals and helping make the district a better place for everybody to learn and succeed? Thank you.
Thank you.
That's a great question. I appreciate him teeing that up. Look, I have 3 kids in the district. You know, I want to make sure that folks understand this was a terrible situation. It was a black mark in our past. But as you said, it's a new day at EPISD. We're very excited about the culture we're creating. We're very much focused on kids. You won't hear me talk about the test much. You will hear me talk a lot about caring for kids and having compassion and really supporting families and children to help them become, the adults we want them to become. And if I lead with that way, and there's not many superintendents talk about love and compassion and character and ethics, and that's the foundation of this district now. And if I say it and I live it and breathe it, it changes the way we operate as a district. And I want the community to know that that's in our past. We have tremendously honest and ethical trustees. We've hired almost a completely new team. Half the principals are new. We're in a different direction, and I feel certain that we've got the right people in place, but I also feel certain that we've got the mechanisms in place to identify any bad actors.
Okay, and a question from Brenda. Does the superintendent or administrators get a bonus tied to test scores?
So when I was hired, the Board of Managers made it clear that that was not going to be in my contract, and we did the same for every employee so down. So that was part of the past, and it doesn't exist anymore.
Okay. If I can jump in,
of course.
Because just a year ago, I was just a viewer. I was looking at this from the outside in, and now that I've had a year to see kind of what the superintendent has been doing with his team and how the Board of Trustees has come together, I'm so moved by the passion of this administration, and they have become real change agents for not just our city but our state and even nationally. People are starting to look at EPISD, wanting to see how we're implementing some of the most progressive educational reform programs that are out there, and they're coming to us because they like what they're seeing in El Paso. This is such a positive shift and something that our community can be extraordinarily proud of. And I tell the teachers, you may not be feeling this, or parents or students for that matter, you may not be feeling this yet in your classrooms, but it's coming. and just trust in this change, trust in your leadership, and gradually, and we hope not too far into the future, you're going to start really seeing big changes in the schools, in the classrooms.
We're getting quite a bit of emails and several phone calls, so we're going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to get straight to those emails and phone calls and tweets. You're watching ABC-7 Extra. We'll be right back. Let's get right to the phone lines. Juan on the east side. Juan, what's your comment or your question?
This is what happened when you have one-party rule in El Paso. When the Democratic Party rules for decades, you get corruption. And it takes someone going out of El Paso to go straight to the president to root out corruption, because the ones who pay for it are the students, not the administrators. The students pay for it by keeping the students ignorant. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think he said that this is what happens when the Democratic Party rules El Paso, but then he mentioned Elliot Shapley, who is a Democrat, who contacted the president. Randy on the east side. Randy, what's your comment or your question?
Hi, this is Randy from the east side again, and I have a question for either Maria or anyone there on the panel that can address it. I'd like to know if anyone knows what and when, or when and what, Jaime Esparza did in response to Elliot Shapley's input to him. There's been claims by Esparza that he didn't kick the football down the road or ignore it or sweep it under the rug, and that he didn't have time to react because the Justice Department moved in on him. I'd like to know if anyone knows when Elliot Shapley and what his response was in result of that. Did he assign someone to investigate? He disclosed his office to it. Thank you, and I'll wait for your response. Thanks for pursuing this issue.
Thank you very much.
I can try to answer that a bit.
Okay,
in my first 6 months here, I met with state, federal, local authorities, as well as the district attorney and other folks, and it's my understanding that Mr. Esparza got involved and looked at it right away, but as you now see, he felt that most of those were federal crimes, and that the FBI or a federal authority had to get involved, and there was really no state basis. And as you see now with all the indictments, including what happened with Garcia, there hasn't been any state violations of state law.
We did get a comment from Jaime Esparza this week, because we asked him just that when Elliot Shapley told us that he went to Jaime Esparza and that the district attorney did not do anything. And the district attorney's office, Jaime Esparza, sent us this. Our office was contacted by Senator Elliot Shapley about his concerns in October 2010. Within a few weeks of Senator Shapley providing us information, the FBI began its investigation. It was the judgment of this office that federal authorities were best equipped to handle the EPISD investigation because the conduct involved federal funding and because of the resources available to them. Okay, let's go to Bill in Central. Hi, Bill. What's your comment or your question?
Yes, kudos for Senator Shapley that he wrote that letter to Barack Obama. It's a shame that we weren't able to take care of it here locally or started the investigation. Second part, in February school board meeting of this year, an assistant principal brought up some type of corruption that was going on, I believe, on the west side and another school. There was not a lot of clarity in that, but it's in February's school board meeting. Can you explain that? And apparently they pointed to the superintendent of the west side.
Thank you very much. So Bill from Central saying kudos to Senator Shapley, or former Senator Shapley, but also saying in a February school board meeting, someone brought up some concerns about corruption at a West Side school by an assistant principal. Do you remember that?
What I'll say is that we've had a few people bring up issues related to corruption or suspected issues of corruption at board meetings. Also, we've had emails directly to the trustees. People have called me directly and the other trustees directly, and or they've reported them directly to the Fraud, Waste, and Abuse Hotline. And every instance, they are fully investigated and reported back to the trustees. So I can't comment on where that is until that report is completed. But
it has started the process of
every
being looked
time
into.
something is brought forward, then our independent auditor that reports directly to the board is looking into it.
Okay, and do you know what the concern was?
No, I can't speak about the specifics, but yeah.
Until, okay.
One point to make there, it's important, they meet with the auditor regularly I'm only involved when the trustees, consider it appropriate for me to be involved, or if we need to have some district resources to utilize, but it's a very clean system, so folks should feel comfortable in going to our audit department. They don't report to me, and again, I'm only involved and deal with them when the trustees decide it's appropriate. We have 7 or 8 people on that team. I mean, we're investing money, quite a bit of money and resources to make sure they have the capability to do regular audits, schedule audits, and then pivot immediately. And it's, 9 times out of 10, it's an email that comes to a trustee or a concern that's raised, and then the audit team gets on it. They work on it together, or they involve us. They think it's appropriate.
Okay, and again, that was one of the reforms that you all implemented,
yes.
Was it the Board of Managers? I think it's the Board of Managers.
They hired the auditor,
right.
and made sure, realigned it so that the auditor reports directly to the board. We put in place an audit committee, and so the auditor that works very closely with the audit committee. Trustee Alvalarde is a former police detective, is the chair of the audit committee, and all those meetings are open and public, so people can attend and hear. We won't share confidential personnel information. We'll go into closed session, even in committee, but otherwise you can kind of hear the status of reports that are being investigated and the number of reports that are being investigated.
Okay, let's go to Melissa in Central. Melissa, what's your comment or your question?
Yes, I really believe that this system is made to fail. Teachers, the administrators, the students, they're being set up for a fall. Standardized testing is not really going to go anywhere. It's not going to help. How can they be merited on testing, whether it's done once a year or twice a year? It's not fair to the student, administrator, or the teachers. Not condoning what the teachers or administrators have done, but I just think I don't like standardized testing, and I think it's preparing them for a fall.
She's absolutely right, and we're mandated by certain state regulations, and so we have to put our issues together, form our delegation, go to Austin, and advocate with other school districts that why standardized testing is really not the best path forward. And the superintendent has built a great relationship with the commissioner of education, and so we have a nice dialogue with them. He agrees in part. The answer is we need accountability for student progress, and so how do we find the right combination of or tools that are going to help us assess student achievement?
Okay, and from Ugo emailing us, you said you were trying to locate these former students that left the EPISD district. Can those former students seek legal action, or do you see the former students seeking legal action? If so, what are your thoughts on this?
Actually, that's a good question. I hadn't thought about that. I mean, first and foremost, we want them to get their education. Any legal proceeding can take a bit of time. So if there's anybody out there that was harmed in any way, please call the district. Call anyone at the district, and they'll get you to the partnership we have with EPCC and help them finish school. With regard to legal action, maybe some kind of federal claim, but I just hadn't considered that yet.
And then an email, I think what's missing is the personal experiences of the students that were affected, and how will there be any move to bring those students to the forefront or to better understand how people were affected by this? What about their stories? I agree. We've tried to feature a student we have in the past. It's hard to track them down. We were talking with one this week, hoping we could share his story, but he backed out of an interview. So if you know anyone who's willing to share their stories with us, please send them our way. We are out of time. Thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Cabrera.
Thank you very much.
You've been really accessible, and I'm so appreciative. Ms. Fenenbock, you have to. Thank you so much. You never back out from an interview. You answer the questions. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for watching us on ABC-7 Extra. We hope you found this informative. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.